The January 6th committee is making progress in interviewing members of the Trump cabinet. One focus of the questioning, how serious were conversations about invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office after the Capitol riots? CNN has learned the former Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, was interviewed in recent days. The former Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien are in talks with the committee, as is the former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. So far, 9 former Trump officials have engaged in some way, with the committee. Our reporters are back now to discuss, and as one of the topics we know the committee is interested in is how serious. We know there was conversations about should we invoke the 25th Amendment? Should we essentially say the president's unfit, remove him from office? Betsy DeVos, who's negotiating with the committee, her spokesman says maybe she's not, but we believe that she is, said this to USA Today in June.
I felt that there were things that the president could have done to stop the activity, to turn it back, to avoid all of the things that ensued, and it was just a bridge too far. I had conversations with a number of my colleagues, and then importantly, I also spoke with the vice president, and he made clear to me that that was not a direction that he was going to move in.
There's a lot there in the sense that, it's pretty right there confirmation that this was a serious conversation among members of the Trump cabinet. And then Mike Pence was like, I don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it is striking that we've now had a former cabinet member go out there on the record and confirm that she was having discussions about the 25th Amendment. We also know from our reporting that Elaine Chao was having discussions about the 25th Amendment. You know, they found out pretty quickly that these were unlikely to go anywhere or be successful in removing Trump from office, that the Vice President Mike Pence was not going to go along with it. And both of those women tendered their resignations on January 7th. So, it's pretty clear the committee does want to be able to get the full picture of just how deep-seated these misgivings were, in the days before January 6th, in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, so much so that people were seriously considering trying to remove the president from office.
And again, it's another example of how the committee, knowing the political attacks it's going to get from Trump and his allies, Betsy DeVos is a member of the Trump cabinet. Elaine Chao is a member of the Trump cabinet. These are Trump loyalists who are there to the very end that the committee is using as witnesses against Trump.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the broader strategy the committee is using. I mean, clearly they've had testimony now from Elaine Chao, from Cassidy Hutchinson, who is very well-informed White House aide. And so I think it speaks to their message that these were people surrounding the president who had concerns about his fitness for office. And I think bringing in someone like Elaine Chao and potentially Betsy DeVos underlines their point and their line of inquiry into the 25th Amendment and to how fit the former president was during the aftermath of January 6th and before then.
And it will be striking. They're spending the month of August doing these interviews, and then we expect more public hearings when they come back in September, September being 2 months before a midterm election. Again, the normal midterm arc is it's about the president and the party that owns the White House, but the January 6th committee has made some pretty dramatic headlines.
They have, and I think in many ways they've exceeded everyone's expectations and what they've been able to turn up and who they've gotten to testify publicly. And I think, to your point, a lot of the midterms is going to be about the president, especially if President Trump, if he does decide to announce that his run for 2024 before the midterms, which there have been reports he might do. His legal problems seem to be growing. And if the committee is able to turn up more information that they release closer and closer to the elections, the Republican Party is still very tied to former President Trump.
Yeah, and it's interesting, if you could put the graphic back up on the screen, you just look at the left side of the screen, the Treasury Secretary, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, among these cabinet members. These are Trump's people.
Yeah, I mean, also even Eugene Scalia, who's the former Labor Secretary, who I think we were a little surprised to see that was someone the committee talked to. Even he said he encouraged Donald Trump to concede after the 2020 election. So I do think the committee is getting a sense of just how wide these concerns were.
Right, from people close, who appointed by the president in sensitive jobs, loyal to the president.